In my house, next to our game console, we have this huge mass of papers. Some are like reference guides we found online. Some is graph paper for notes. Some are things like, remembering how to build spawners or sorters. And then, we've got this little book that has all of our coordinates in it that we find. So, like when we find like dungeons or the stronghold or things like that, we can write it down. So today, I'm going to make better books than this mess. So I'm inspired, of course, by the in-game bookshelf. So we're going to make books that, look like this. And because of all the different sizes, some of the books are going to be little, and they're just going to be like little scratch books that people can write, just their basic notes in. And these are going to be custom for my gamer friends. And then I'm also going to make larger books. This one's kind of falling apart. These are both my test subjects. So this one's got like, enchantments as well as like how to use the potion thingy. So these books could be a really cool party gift. Like each kid could take a book off the shelf as they left the party. Okay, let's get started. So the first part of this project, it started out that I was going to make some books, and then I started digging into the reference guide stuff. And then I started realizing that the stuff that I found online is great and all, but number one, it's mostly for Java. And number two, it's basically a JPEG, which made it kind of blurry when I printed it out and made it super blurry when I tried to print it out small. So I kept thinking of all the other things I have to look up mid-game, and I made these myself. So I'm going to go ahead and post a link in the description to my Buy Me a Coffee account. And if you want to download this for free, you can. And it's really, really useful. So I have been sorting and stapling, and now I'm folding. I don't have any of those like fancy book presses or anything like that. And you know what? Maybe you don't either. So we're going to press it using what we've got, which is a cutting board, a bunch of heavy books, and my trusty cast iron pot. So I've put together little packets of paper for the books that I'm going to give my friends. And I've used a variety of textures. So I've got, this is going to be the end paper here. And then I've just got some plain paper and some lined paper as well as some graph paper. And I've kind of interchanged it. People can use it as they want. I'm cutting it in half and then I'm going to fold it. That's the only way I'm going to be able to use the lined paper is on these quarter books, because if I try to use it on one of the folded in half books like that, then the lined paper doesn't work. See, that'll be funky, but graph paper will work. So if you're doing this, just keep that in mind. The paper I'm using today has come from such a variety of sources. The graph paper came from an estate that I helped clean out after a wonderful lady passed. And let's see, the lined paper came from old school books. You know how you have to sometimes get school books from the schools, but then the kids only use maybe a quarter of the book. So I harvested a whole bunch of paper from those. And then I ended up going to one of those crazy like bin places the Goodwill has where everything's just kind of dumped into a bin. And I found a lot of like couple reams of paper there. And then a yard sale. Like I actually got the green from a yard sale. So none of this is bought fresh. It's just kind of gleaned and gathered from different locations around town. So now I'm going to move on to my smallest book. So this is the tiniest of the books on the bookshelf. I only need to make 2 of them. So I've actually got just some old scrap paper from all the different projects I've been doing, as well as some work projects. And because this is just going to be for show, I'm not going to actually give this book away. It's just going to live in the bookcase and be kind of cool. But I still have to cut it in half. And then from here, I'm going to cut it down again a little bit, but I'm going to leave the sides long. Oh my gosh, I just cut all of that in half. I was wondering why it was so thick. Oopsies. Okay, well, I'll use that for something else. Man. All right, so from here, these are going to get a lot smaller. So the first thing I'll do is cut this part off, and then I'm going to wait until I actually make the book, because I'm going to have to trim this edge anyway, and I might as well trim it to the actual size of the book. I have all 28 of my inner books all done. So some of the books, like these guys, have the custom guidebook that I have designed. And then these are just trash. So it's just it's just my old trash paper. And so are these, just little trash paper pieces. And then these books are made with actual paper that you can write on. So these are the little books that I'm going to customize with my friends' names and make custom books for them. So let's get to the covers. So when I first had the idea for the project, I was just excited because I love to make books, but my first book ended up being just super plain, and I got a little discouraged. But then I got this birthday card from my mother-in-law, and she used one of these emboss presses. And I found absolute inspiration in that. I decided to use some of the in-game motifs and make some embosses all by myself. So I hand cut these, which is fine for this little test book, but of course it's entirely too much to do for all the books I'm going to be making, and the fact that I want to put all of my friends' names. So I'm going to go back to the computer and use the silhouette to custom cut all of these out of the cardstock. So I got this thing all nice and cut out, and now I've got this problem where the top of my cake was an island. And so I'm going to figure out how to put that back together. Let's see. So my solution here is to use packing tape on both sides and then just kind of press the tape down as I apply it, and hopefully it'll still have that indentation. A few of these will be used a lot, and I want to protect them as best as possible. So I've applied a lacquer finish to my template because I want to waterproof them. So this is maybe above and beyond if you're only going to make 1 or 2 books, but if you're going to make a ton, you might want to go this extra step. So while the lacquer dries, I can get the colored paper organized. Each one of these lines is going to be a book. Somebody might argue that some of the books are 2 thick or 3 thick, but I'm going to make them all 1 thick, and just using the colors that I have on hand and available to me, I'm going to replicate these as best I can. So you can see with this first book, it's a lighter red book with 2 darker red bands, and that's just basically what we're doing here. I just have a lot of colored paper and stripes to cut out now. Okay, all done, or at least the quarter fold ones. Now that I've got all of my paper cut out, I can move on to embossing. Embossing is relatively simple, and sometimes you can use a light box, so I'm pretty lucky because the red actually shows through, but some of the dark colors it does not show through. For the red one, I'm going to use the sandstone motif, just eyeballing it here. Okay, so you lightly spray everything with water, and paper's like, it's like wood in that you can bend it. It's malleable, but we're gonna have to put water on bits and pieces at a time. And then I'm just using paintbrushes, so lots of different paintbrushes here, and I even have an old mute thermometer that has a nice rounded point for the really detail-y stuff. And I'm just going in here and I'm pressing, and really, like, that's it. Oops, and I'm also turning off my light. So got lots of embossing to do. Let's get to it. Well, that's pretty cool. So with all the embossed designs, I have found that it's a good idea to go through with progressively smaller tools. So the first tool is just kind of getting the big, the big design in, and then the smaller tools are helping really define and, get it really nice and tight into all the detailed bits. So I've just been plugging away at these, watching other people's YouTube videos and whatnot. And I wanted to show you kind of a technique I've picked up as I've been on this. And it is using the ye old grave rubbing technique with a crayon. And I do this while the paper is still dry, and that pulls up the design. So then once I add the water on and start pressing, I can see it because I can't use a light table on anything but the light red paper. So all the other papers are just too dense. So use crayon and highlight the design, and then I go in with my tools afterwards. These are going to make really cool bookmarks too. I think I'm going to use my scrap paper and make bookmarks for my library. And it was so nice to finally get to this part of the build. I knew making the guidebooks would take a really long time, and I was right. And so it's nice to just get here and start building, and just sitting here and embossing all the different books. Gosh, these are so cool. They're so cool. Well, since I knew I'd be doing a lot of spray mounting, I built myself a little spray box thingy using an Amazon box and some leftover packing paper. I've got my spray mount, and it should be a lot nicer out here to do all this work. So I'm just gonna spray a few strips at a time, and then I've got my table set up right inside so that I can very quickly apply them to the cover that they belong to. Whew, I have been collecting chipboard for probably the past 3 weeks. So anytime we had any packaging at all, I would snag it. And I'll be honest with you, I have also emptied all of our cereal boxes are here, and the bags of cereal are upstairs loose and floating about. But this is what I'm going to use to make the books hardback. And then everything is going to get glued together, and then the inner book is going to get glued to the inside so that I have, kind of a semblance of a hardback book. And it just makes it look a little bit nicer and more finished. Oh my gosh, by the end of this, my knife was so dull. I also cut little 1/4-inch strips, and those I'm gluing into the middle to create a defined spine. So because I'm making such skinny little books, they need that spine to help pull off the effect of the Minecraft bookcase. And I use this green tape here to help me with alignment so that I could just kind of blow through all the books really, really quick. Now you might be wondering, hey Bobbin, why aren't you making a full-scale bookcase? That would be super cool. And yeah, it would be so cool. I totally want to do that. But a meter by meter bookcase is going to require like reams of paper. Like it's probably going to be book 5 of a certain wizard series times 28. That's an action for a more mature channel. So at this point, I have 38 subscribers, and I love all of you, but that's not quite enough to go into the expense and time and energy for a full-scale build like that. Maybe next year. I've got so many next year projects that are bigger and more time consuming, and I'm so excited about them. So if you like what I'm doing, then you gotta tell YouTube that I should continue. And that's liking, subscribing, commenting, the works. Thanks. Well, everything has just come to a complete screeching halt as I have a problem. And the problem is best illustrated here with the fact that the book is just coming out completely. And this book also just came completely out of the end paper. I was so close. Okay, so having the staples fail has really just felt like a complete disaster. I had to step away and find some solutions, but find some solutions I did. After a little bit of research, one thing that I found really interesting was that this brown paper is actually more brittle than any of the other papers. You can see how it's cracked here. So using the browned end paper didn't help, but it's not an absolute fix. So this one has green end paper and it's behaving a little bit better, but I think there's still a lot of stress on these booklets. There's only 3 points of perforation here, and so that's where all the stress comes, especially as I'm assembling them. So I have a solution. So I'm going to rip out all the staples and sew the books together. Yay! Now you might be wondering, Bobbin, aren't you super annoyed by this setback? And I'm going to tell you honestly, yes. Yes, I am. But I'm also a Minecraft player, which means you can be halfway through some project, realize that you've completely run out of resources, and you have to go on a 3-hour quest to get more. So I'm good. Thanks for asking. Now that I've done a couple test books and figured out some of the problems, I've got a couple solutions. And one of the solutions is to pre-crease the spine of the covers. The spine is critical for making the bookcase look like a cool Minecraft bookcase. And by pre-creasing it, I'm really ensuring that it's got that nice fold and bend before I stuff all those extra pages and the end paper and all the stress of, combining the books together. So the other step I have added is I am pre-creasing the end paper as well. So this is hopefully going to make inserting it into the cover and gluing everything together a lot faster, cleaner, neater, and less stress on everything. All right, let's go do some gluing. Before gluing in the books, I added a placeholder ribbon. So that's just sandwiched in between the cover and the main pages of the book. And man, that pre-folding has helped so much. And then I'm just using my paintbrush to kind of seal it into the little crack before I smooth it flat. And this is a dream. This is working so much better than last time. Well, that works fantastic. Woohoo! Next. And we are done. Oh my gosh, these are so cool. I mean, it was a lot of work, but totally worth it. Look at all these cool books I made. Whoa. Let's look at a couple of the details ones. I love cake. And this is my name, Lost Bobbin, in the galactic alphabet. I think this one's really cool with the diamond pattern. And this one having the sandstone motif. And you can even see it kind of wraps around the back. Nothing's perfect. And this one's got little hearts on it. Little tiny hearts, even though it's just like dumb scratch throwaway paper. So I'd like to say that I'm 100% done, but I have one more thing to do. I was told by my daughter I had to make a bookshelf for the video or it would not be complete. I mean, I agree with her to a point. Since I'm giving most of the books away, I don't really see the need to make a nice permanent bookshelf. And you might not want to either, especially if you're making these for like birthday party favors or something. So I'm simply gluing up a foam core box and that is scaled to the books, but not the game, right? So it's not going to be a square, and that's okay. Because what we're building is just a display to hold all the cool books you've made, and that's basically it. So we'll make it brown, but we're not going to worry about pixelation or perfection or anything like that. But I do think it'd be pretty cool to build a chiseled bookcase out of wood, like to scale. That'd be pretty cool. But now I have a nicely bound guidebook. Whenever I forget how the user interface works on the potion stand or what villager sells what, I can just get back to gaming. And how cool are these books? I mean, I do love making books. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I'll see you next time.